Hey everybody, welcome to the channel and thank you so much for joining me for a visit to Bryce Canyon National Park, which is our third of the Utah Mighty 5 National Parks and is located in southern Utah. Let's get started here with an incredible view from above the Bryce Amphitheater. Now we'll get straight to the park summary. Bryce Canyon National Park was established in 1928 by President Calvin Coolidge. However, President Warren G. Harding is more so credited with the creation of the park because he established it as a national monument in 1923. The park sees about 2.3 million visitors annually, so quite a bit less than Zion, the last park we visited. The park pretty much has two sections. You have the central area just off of the rim of the Bryce Amphitheater, and then there's also a scenic drive to the south. As for features, Bryce is famous for being home to the largest collection of the geological formation known as hoodoos in the entire world. While I didn't really see much wildlife of note while I was visiting the park, there is a variety of wildlife in the park. In fact, there are 3 endangered species that make their home in the park: the California condor, the southwestern willow flycatcher, and the Utah prairie dog. As the park sits atop the Colorado Plateau at a substantially higher elevation than Zion National Park, it is somewhat cooler and receives more precipitation than Zion. However, not a whole lot, only about 15 to 16 inches of rain each year. And again, due to the elevation, the park sees around 200 days of freezing temperatures each year. As for cell service, you should have cell service throughout the park as long as you're above the canyon rim. However, it does get quite a bit better the closer you are to Utah 12, which is the major road that accesses the park. With all that said, let's check out more of the park. I do want to encourage you to please stick around to the end of the video where I will answer the question on if Bryce Canyon is an overrated park and give you my overall recommendation, in addition to 3 really good tips for if you choose to visit this park. Let's take a few moments here to look over the park map. You might be surprised to learn that Bryce Canyon isn't actually a canyon. The park is actually composed of a series of natural amphitheaters, the largest of which is the Bryce Amphitheater, which are carved into the eastern side of the Paunsaugunt Plateau. Canyons can only be carved by rivers. Essentially, as water flows off the eastern side of the plateau, the resulting erosion forms amphitheaters. We'll take a closer view of the Bryce Amphitheater section where you can see the main area of the park. Here's the lodge. Again, we're getting started out at Bryce Point, and in this video we'll hike over to Inspiration Point, then to Sunset Point to start the Navajo Loop. Then we'll join that hike with the Queen's Garden Trail and exit at Sunrise Point. Following those hikes, we'll then head along the Scenic Drive, which runs to the south and is about 13 miles long. The shuttle route for this park is fairly short. If you have an RV, you need to note the driving large vehicle portion right there. Here's a look at the wall of windows. You may notice the hoodoos have sort of a white cap on a lot of them. In order to form, hoodoos actually need a more dense layer of rock at the very top. As erosion occurs, the cap, or the more dense layer of rock, will actually put the softer rock below it under a little bit more pressure and will make the softer rock actually more resistant to erosion. Hoodoos are formed through a combination of water erosion, which again would be the water eating into the Paunsaugunt Plateau, but there's also a process known as frost wedging, and that involves water penetrating the surface and then freezing, which causes the water to expand and therefore form cracks. And then again, as Bryce sees 200 freezing and thawing cycles each year, those cycles have repeated many times until you now have the hoodoos that you see here today. What struck me looking at the hoodoos was the amazing symmetry between some of them. The best way I could describe Bryce would be almost as if there was an ancient fortress and it somehow partially melted. But it's a fantastic, otherworldly thing to see, and it's, there's nothing like this anywhere else in the world. According to the legend of the Paiute peoples who inhabited this area, the hoodoos are actually another tribe of people who were transformed into hoodoos by the Coyote trickster god. Here is Inspiration Point, which was my favorite area of the park. Again, in the distance there is the Aquarius Plateau, which is actually 15 miles away. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, I'd really appreciate it so much if you'd please give me a like. Bryce Canyon is actually the 22nd park we've visited so far on this channel, and we have quite a few more national parks to go. So if you want to see more videos like this one, please consider subscribing. Thanks so much, and let's continue with the video. Now we're going to head over to Sunset Point and get started on the Navajo Loop trail. Right away, you'll see a very famous hoodoo, Thor's Hammer. Now, the Marvel Comics Thor didn't make his debut until 1962, and so the naming of Thor's Hammer actually refers to thunderstorms that will pass through the area, and Bryce Canyon can be kind of lightning prone, and people have actually been struck by lightning in this park, so you need to be aware of that. Now let's head down Navajo Loop. You've seen these switchbacks here on social media more than once, I'm sure. You do need to watch your footing coming down here, as I did find that the switchback were actually quite slippery. The park actually recommends that you do this trail clockwise, so of course we're going to do it the opposite way, counterclockwise. I thought this hoodoo kind of looked like Godzilla. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Once you get to the midway point of Navajo Loop, you're going to find yourself within a serene, relaxing kind of forest here, and it was really neat with the trees mixed in with the hoodoos. So now we'll continue across until we link up to the Queen's Garden Trail. One of the neat things about this trail is walking through the little arches or passageways. And they call this trail the Queen's Garden Trail because there's a special hoodoo here that they've named Queen Victoria because it resembles the famous monarch's profile. We'll zoom in on it and I'll put a picture up of Queen Victoria, who prior to Queen Elizabeth was the longest reigning British monarch. And I'll let you decide if that hoodoo resembles her. Let's continue along the trail here. This is actually a fairly fun hike. I'm not going to wait till the end of the video to reiterate that this park is at a high altitude. Most of the time in the park, you're going to be above 7,000 feet, and that can make just simple walking difficult, in addition to there being cooler temperatures. And also you're going to need sunscreen. So make sure you're prepared for the altitude when visiting this park, and we're going to make it up above the rim and complete this hike. Following this hike, I boondocked for the night, and I wanted to get up early the next day and get sunrise, but I overslept. Sorry. We'll get started on the second day here along the Scenic Drive. We'll first visit Swamp Canyon. Here are Piracy Point and Fairview Point. Now we'll move along the Natural Bridge. I really enjoyed this overlook here. And that's going to bring us to the recommendation for Bryce Canyon and top tips. So the title of the video is Bryce Canyon Overrated. And I do have to say, while Bryce is a very nice park, I've seen where many people include Bryce in their top 10 parks or even as their best national park. And I respect those opinions. And while I do believe Bryce is definitely unique enough to be a national park, I do feel the park is somewhat overrated. I don't feel it rises to the level where many people place it. I actually just saw a Facebook post where somebody mentioned how much better the park was than Zion, and I just don't see that. Bryce is just far too small in my opinion. There's only about 50 miles of hiking trails here, and I just don't think, unless you combine visiting Bryce with other destinations on your trip, that it would really be worth the effort of traveling all the way out here. Bryce is similar to Badlands in that the sense that individually, I'm not quite sure a single hoodoo is really all that impressive. Thor's Hammer and Queen Victoria aren't quite the same epic park icon as, say, Half Dome or the Grand Prismatic Spring, but taken as a whole, again, similar to the South Dakota Badlands, the amphitheaters here with the hoodoos are absolutely an amazing landscape, and while I missed it, I'm sure the sunrise here is magical. To make the most out of a trip of Bryce, again, I think you're going to need to visit this park in combination with other destinations. I believe most commonly Bryce is is visited in conjunction with a trip to Zion, and that of course would be a good trip. Another really good idea would be visiting Bryce together with Capitol Reef. In between Bryce and Capitol Reef is Utah 12, which is an amazing scenic drive, and I'll actually do a kind of little bonus video on that drive very shortly. Along Utah 12, you can visit Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument and also Kodachrome Basin State Park. Those are really great stops, and to the west of Bryce Canyon, there's also Cedar Breaks, which is another fantastic stop you can make. So there's quite a bit of other things you can do in addition to visiting Bryce Canyon in the area, and visiting all of those locations would make a great trip in addition to visiting the national park. And also, of course, visiting all of the Utah Mighty Five is certainly a worthwhile trip as well. But again, I think coming here just to visit Bryce Canyon National Park, I think that'd be a bit underwhelming in my opinion. Again, because the park is just too small, and I'll talk here in just a second about how long you actually really need to see most of the park. Getting to our top tips, first is a trail that I missed. You turn right off of Utah 12 to get to the park entrance, but if you continue straight instead of turning into the park along Utah 12, you'll come across the Mossy Cave Trail as you head east. It's actually a relatively short hike. It's less than a mile, and the Mossy Cave Trail will lead you to what, as far as I know, is the only waterfall within the park. So you definitely won't want to miss out on that hike. Second, and I've mentioned this before with other scenic drives that dead end, when you start those scenic drives, you actually want to drive to the end. So with Bryce, you want to drive directly to Rainbow Point and then start working your way back to the other stops. And that way you'll stay ahead of the crowds. And then third, because of its elevation and remote location, Bryce features some of the clearest night skies in the entire country. For most of the United States, on a clear night sky, you can maybe see 2,000 stars if you're away from cities. At Bryce, you can actually see about 7,500 stars, which makes for just really incredible night skies. You can actually see the Milky Way with your own eyes. Now, due to my reliance on boondocking, I wasn't able to actually participate in a night sky program here, but I have done it at other parks, and especially if you're from a big city, you've never really seen a night sky this way before. So you definitely want to participate in a night skying program at this park if you can. I think for your average visitor, if you do Navajo Loop, the Queen's Garden, and the Scenic Drive, those can easily be done in a day. You can probably finish things up by early afternoon if you get started at sunrise. And this park is very easy to visit, and it's very small, so you can get through it fairly quickly. The best places for sunrise and sunset, they're pretty easy to find because that's actually the name of the respective overlooks. Just refer to the map for those. As for boondocking to the immediate kind of northwest of the park, there's plentiful boondocking in the Dixie National Forest. And that's going to do it for Bryce Canyon National Park. Now we're on to the next adventure. I want to thank you so much for joining me for this video, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks and take care. Bye.